Hi, Renee. And if you don't mind, I'm going to do my typical starting comments.
You can start sharing your screen, Ernie.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to do my typical starting comments, even though you've all heard them before. So this is us getting together to learn from each other around management topics. It is most valuable when everyone contributes, either your experiences or ideas, on the topic that's being led today by Renee. So appreciate everybody being active participants in the call. Thanks. Take it away, Renee.
Okay, so good morning, good evening, everyone. I'm Rene. I'm the chosen presenter today, so please bear with me. I chose this topic not because I'm exceptional at it, but because I believe I can really improve on its takeaways. And as a lead of an critical operations team, there are certainly remarkable takeaways, and this is what I really aspire to be, or someone that I aspire to be. So, these two, they seem to be opposite ends of the same coin when you define them. And yet, when you put them together, servant leadership is a genuine paradox in itself. Um, Servant leadership is an important leadership approach. It's a philosophy that contrasts with traditional management or leadership. And the term was actually coined by Robert Greenleaf. He wrote a book in 1970 called The Servant as a Leader. And it's the first time that he coined this term. So this began actually a huge movement to shift from this style, a controlling, top-down, telling people what to do style, to this style, there to help, unleash talent, and empower people style. So he says that traditional leadership sees the people lower on this pyramid of leadership, lower in this structure, serving the leaders in authority above them, so that people below serve the leaders. But servant leadership really flips, should we say, this whole equation on its head. So he mentioned some of the famous servant leaders we know. Of course, there is Gandhi, Mother Teresa, Nelson Mandela. Now, Robert Greenleaf goes on to say that in today's organization, it really makes sense to be a servant leader because his basic idea is that if you invest in people, then they will help you build a better organization. And that's why you see servant leaders developing other people, essentially bringing out the best in other people, getting them the best training, treating them well, making sure they're fully satisfied at work so that they can contribute and reach their full potential. Servant leaders are also known for their good treatment of the people that are under their care, and they're known for cultivating collaboration, trust, and empathy. So maybe I'd like to ask the audience, so what type of leader do we want to follow? Is it this one or this one? Yeah. So any comments before I proceed?
Does anybody want to chime in on that? What kind of lead? I think it's obvious, right? Don't we all? I think everybody on this call feels supported. You all have intentions to be successful and grow your career, right? So, but I will say that, depending on a lot of factors, people may show up to your charge thinking they want, if you could go back,
Yeah, sir. This one?
people may show up to your charge thinking they want, and maybe even only used to this in their lives and their careers. Maybe they grew up with overbearing parents who always told them what to do. Maybe their first couple jobs, they were green, so people were just telling them what to do. And their only experiences in life are basically in top-down situations where people were not empowering them to make decisions on their own in life. That happens a lot, especially when people are new and they don't recognize that, some people, it happens so much that they don't even have aspirations beyond what somebody expects of them. That can be a tough thing as a manager, right? The easiest thing to do is manage someone who has aspirations because you can help them, right? They're self-driven. The harder thing to do is manage someone who's just saying, I just need to show up to work and do what you tell me to do, and it's all okay. And that happens a lot because that's where people come from often. So servant leadership can actually be pretty tough. I'm looking forward, it's a great topic, Renee. I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say about it. But I think when you ask, what do you want? Certainly everybody on this call would say, oh, I want to work in a servant leadership environment. That's why you like it here at Task Us. But many people who join us, and this may be their first experience in that situation, don't even know what this looks like to know they want it.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Thank you. Okay.
Well said.
Let me proceed. Thank you for that, John.
That's tough, though. It's tough because, hey, I want to support you. No, I just want you to tell me what to do. Right?
Yeah, okay.
That can happen. It might not happen that literally, but that often is what could be happening. And you go, okay, and that's okay, maybe when they're beginning, but sooner or later you have to say, hey, it's time for you to be an equal member of this team. And a lot of people aren't used to that in life. Okay, go ahead. Sorry, Renee.
Okay, thank you. So the next slides are from the transcript. There's a certain Chris Kim. He talked in a TEDx talk, these TEDx talks. But still, he based his session on the book by Greenleaf. So he said that in essence, a servant leader is someone who puts service first to a person, to a mission, to a purpose, or to our values. So he advocates collaboration, trust, empathy, and a true servant leader is actually the one who asks himself to serve first and lead second. So it's, as John said, the traditional way is to lead first and to serve second. So this is the other way around. So he says that it's a shift from managing for results to designing environments that create results. Okay, so, well, I'd like to ask again, does it make sense? But, well, John already said, yes, this really makes sense. So this brings us to the first paradox, where Chris says that servant leaders are leading to serve, basically. Let me ask everyone also, how many of us have volunteered? Well, not really, maybe outside of work, maybe perhaps in an outreach, in a community service. Can anyone have an anecdote? Yeah, Kent, of course. Yes, go ahead, Kent.
Yeah, as the batch leader, also batch president of our IT in PUP, it's really important that you really leading to serve, because everybody's so busy, and if they see that me being busy and I can still do these things outside of my work and outside the demand of my work, they tend to follow too, and with the same advocate and same purpose, we are always being triumphant with our goal and with our purpose to serve the community every year. And thanks for folks helping us here, donating to our outreach. Thank you, guys.
Well, actually, I also have an anecdote. It's a very long time ago. I remember a time our batch in high school, we were the sponsors, and I actually volunteered as one of the main organizers. So even joining the band, yes, I was in a band, and I also lent financial support. But when the closing remarks were being spoken, of course, the names were called, acknowledged, and then my name was not called. So, of course, honestly, I was hurt. And after that event, I really didn't show up for a long time. Well, of course, until I decided to make amends and I showed up again. So we were again, I believe we were the sponsors again next year. So I decided to be active again on that event. So yeah. Any other anecdotes on this before I proceed?
I have an addition to that, Rene, because I just heard from Miss Rachel. If you know Miss Rachel, guys, she's very familiar. She's very famous to the young ones, young kids, because they're watching her in YouTube. She said in one graduation, that if you're continuing showing up and taking actions, you're making difference. So glad that you still showed up, Rene, even if you were not acknowledged for that particular time. Because when you show up, I mean, it means something, right? It's not really about the acknowledgement or everything, but it's the way, it's your purpose. It's what you do.
Yeah, thank you. So yep. So then Chris proceeded by saying, great leaders actually qualify first by putting other people first. So great leaders actually choose to be invisible. And he says that the do you good today may be forgotten tomorrow. Yeah, in my case. But he says that you have to do it anyway. Okay, so instead of the leader claiming, oh yeah. So this is now the new definition of a boss, according to Ronald Greenfield. So it's actually a back office support service. And instead of the leader saying, I did it myself, the leader should embrace, we did it ourselves. So this brings us to paradox number 2, which is servant leaders are leading by being anonymous. Yeah. Anyone wants to reflect on this?
I think it's much more difficult to be a servant leader because there's you have to put into that because you have to be aware and get everyone involved and push from the from to get everyone else involved and making sure that you're aware of everything that's happening, which is more difficult if you're just driving from the top down. And that's one thing I've noticed. And I think today's environment, the way things have evolved and what I've seen in my career has been much more of a push towards servant leadership to be a good leader because people are expecting it. So it's much more difficult to be a leader in that respect.
I'm sorry, Nate, are you saying that it's harder to become a servant leader?
I think it's harder
what
to
you
be a
meant?
servant leader. Yes, it's much more difficult to be a servant leader than it is to be an autocratic leader, let's say.
I kind of disagree. Sorry. I mean, John's saying something.
Yeah.
I think it's easy to tell people what to do. What's
Yeah,
difficult
that's my point.
is cleaning up the mess that eventually ends up happening when people leave and are dissatisfied.
I think you have to trust as a servant leader, you have to trust so much more those that work for you to put the trust in them to do what your expectations are. That's where I think it's much more difficult to do that
What
than
was your
to
thought on
be a
it?
top-down leader.
I think that if we continue to support, guide, and develop our leaders or managers, direct reports, I think they'll get there, because it's always a we, right? It's not an I. It's not an I did it. It's not I'm successful. It's we, because their success is our success and their failure is our failure. So I
mean, it's
think
interesting. So
that
maybe would you I think maybe it's like short-term versus long-term gains.
Yeah,
Like if you're not a servant leader, you might get short-term gains, but you probably won't get long-term gains.
Yeah. I mean, my thoughts here with the word comes to mind is cultivating talents, right? So right at the start, the leader would need to enforce a specific guidelines or showing your team the way. But eventually, as they develop talents and you guide them, you give them a free hand. So in a way, the servant leadership part is ensuring that your team grows along with you as towards a success. So in the end, you're all successful.
right, right. I agree with that. I mean, I think if our team is not growing, then we're not growing as a leader, right? Because they're stuck, and that means we're not doing what we're supposed to do for them to grow and become successful. And if we always have to make the decision for everything, then why do we have a team?
and the
It's
goal
just
should always be to cultivate leaders to take your role,
right,
to take over for you. And
right.
that's
Leaders work themselves out of a job. They grow their team to become the next leaders. I agree.
Thank you for those inputs, sirs, ma'am, madam. So yeah. Proceeding. So please then stress that being a doer doesn't make a great leader, precisely. And that leaders should not be afraid. Now, the second point, leaders should not be afraid to be vulnerable. So this means that leaders should take it positively if some of his teammates are technically better than him. Because as Terry said, this is actually a team strength. Maybe I'm not good at SQL Server, but look, I can contribute something about Redshift or data warehouse. So it's like many heads are better than one, something like that. So even Stephen Covey has some wise words of wisdom to say about this. So he's the one who wrote the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So he says, leadership is communicating to people their worth and potential so clearly that they come to see it in themselves. So what he implies is that precisely the credit should go to the staff and not the leader. And this is also emphasized by a famous CEO of a famous coffee shop. And he said, we are not a coffee company serving people. We are a people company who just happens to serve coffee. Okay, taking a quote from Howard Schultz. And so we come to paradox number 3. So Greenleaf says that servant leaders become great by being weak. Another paradox, great, weak. So what he meant by this, yeah, that's it. We become great by being vulnerable. We are open to feedback. Now, these concepts may seem idealistic or impractical. Of course, maybe because business is all about profit, first of all. But yes, maybe we should have this paradigm shift, and that, yes, a leader should now focus on helping like a successful succession and just help the team grow behind him or her. So Yes, so he ends by precisely asking this to the audience, and I want to ask you also on behalf of him. So he ended the TechX session by asking the audience, do you want to be served by others, or do you want to serve others? So there's a basic difference. So yes, any other reflections on this before I proceed? This is my part 2 of this session.
Well, the last paradox you spoke about, Rene, I think the 360-degree evaluation that we now see in most organizations, or most organizations that value people, is seeing this paradox in in reality, right? Because leaders are now asked to take feedback from their teams. It's not just a one-way appraisal type of feedback being given by the leaders to the team. It works both ways. So I would say, that's a great mechanism for a leader to also constantly learn and seek feedback from his or her team.
Yeah. Well, for me, I can cite the following perhaps as the closest thing that I implement on becoming a servant leader. So, for example, at the start of each day, each of us would say good morning to each other at the beginning of his shift, and then ends his shift by saying goodbye or see you tomorrow, or these are the things that I will turn over to you. So actually, I initiated this. This is basically just to break the daily ice. And on weekly team meets, I always start the meeting by saying, how can I be of help? What do you need from me? That's always how I start the meeting. And then I make it a requirement on myself to be hands-on. So of course, I need to know how to access the jump server, how to access the AWS management console, how to open the MySQL editor, how to run SQL monitoring scripts, how to implement the Redshift alter commands, and resolve the snow tickets myself. So this is a requirement on myself on being hands-on. I also am an advocate, a strong advocate of empowerment. I do not micromanage. I praise the staff in real time, even if it's just a minute thing that he supported somebody on a very minor thing. And I am also lenient on offsets. As long as, of course, there is a smooth turnover of the pending task. But I admit that these are still my areas of improvement. So I think I still have to be more firm in my decision, because it is just required of me to be to operationally decide fast. Because our SLAs are less than 30 minutes, less than 5 minutes. So I have to make these decisions on what approach to do. And then I think I still have to be more responsive on calls. And as much as possible, I'd like to involve myself in all whatever technical calls as possible, troubleshooting calls. I'd like to be involved myself. So yes, that's how I like to implement this servant leadership. So any reflections from you guys?
What are other people's doing that might be different than that, or in addition to that, help promote the independence of your teams? This independent success, the growth, the success, the ability for your team members to be empowered. What are other people doing for that?
Well, so in my case, I probably differ. I have a little different opinion on this from what Rene just mentioned, and I'm sorry for that, Rene. I don't want to be there in all the meetings. I don't like to do that. I just leave it to the team. And then I would probably, when I talk to them, I'll get to know how it is going, just for me to understand what happened. And that's how I like to be involved. But then I don't think it's practically possible for all of us to be present for all discussions, all meetings. Like if we might just delay the conversation if we're doing that. So by having people lead the meetings, I guess that's how I think we can empower them rather than us being present in all the conversations.
About
That's a good-
empowerment, yeah.
Go
Sorry,
ahead.
John. About empowerment as well, one thing I learned from our leaders is when it comes to empowerment, what we are doing right now is if there will be problems, issues, or situations, we are asking our somewhat like future leaders, what do they think about the problem and how can they resolve it? So you need to ask their opinion as well, right? Not just always us doing it, giving the somewhat like the right solution, right? So by doing that, somewhat like we are empowering them and we are giving them somewhat like a feeling that they can by themselves can resolve things on their own.
Yeah, I kind of go with Rajat. I mean, we can't be in every meeting, right? I definitely can't be in every meeting, but I think it's important that we coach our leaders, our managers, our team, have an open door policy so that they feel comfortable bringing information where they struggle. Some people struggle about just having one-on-ones with others to widen their network, right? We all work from home, but some folks are not used to that, right? So I encourage my team to do that. But when they start to do that, there's some that would feel like, well, they're always canceling on me, and so they start to feel like, I'm not important, or I don't want to do this. So I just encourage them to, keep going, don't stop. It happens to me when I set up a meeting with another leader, and it takes 4 times before this person actually show up. So coaching, and my coach is like, hey, consistency, persistent, just keep going. And finally, some of them happens, but as leader, I think we continue to coach, ask questions where they feel they need the help on how to deal with more difficult things. And I think that's going to help them grow.
Yeah,
But
providing the
I cannot attend every
opportunity.
meeting.
Yeah, and providing the opportunity, even if you're in the meeting, but providing opportunity for others on your team to lead in certain circumstances and observe as a leader. And then there's an opportunity to coach beyond that, in another sense. Not in the moment, but thereafter, an opportunity to coach, and that provides the growth.
I don't know that anybody does this on our management team here. But certainly I've seen it happen in other circumstances where servant leadership is doing somebody else, like doing the job for them. Like, okay, let me jump in and help solve that problem. Maybe we all do it a little bit, but like doing it too much, not giving people the chance to learn or make a mistake. I think at one point or another, I'm going to guess that most of you have heard me say, I'd rather you ask for forgiveness than permission. You'll get my forgiveness. That's the best thing you can do to your team, like promote them, let them know that you're there for them, but not there for them to hold their hand and pull them across the gap that they need to stretch. They got to make the mistakes and bump their head or bruise their knuckles, like we all did. That's how we learn. And a lot of times, and I may have even done that a few times here, where when you know that's going to happen, I reach out to my partners and I say, hey, this person's getting a growth opportunity. I appreciate your support with it. That's servant leadership. Like all that might happen in the background. Nobody knows. That's servant leadership. So one thing is that you're doing the work for the person. Like that might happen once in a while when the things are urgent, but if it happens a couple times, you got to really look at yourself and not be that person. I'll tell you, I had to learn to not be that person in my 30s. And I still make the mistake from time to time. And then the other thing is we think that being a servant leader means being nice. Sometimes being nice is the worst way to be a servant leader. There's a little quip I used to say when people would ask me about being a dad. And they say, well, you sure seem to get along with your kids, but you can't be friends to your kids. Everybody's heard that expression, right? You can't be a friend to your kid. People would say that to me. You sure get along with your kids well, but you can't be friends with your kids. And I said, well, I don't know what kind of friend you are, but when my friend's messing up, I tell them. Right? So it's the same thing as a servant leader. Radical candor is equally important.
Radical candor. Yep.
Right? Equally important. That you don't like hold things back with them, that you're talking to them like you would talk to a friend and go, hey, but you got this. Give them the feedback and say, you got this. I believe in you. Okay. Anybody have anything else they want to share? Okay, cool.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, thank you for those feedbacks and guidance. So yes, let me proceed. There's another TEDx event presenter. Her name is Alison Fett. She's the assistant vice president of a talent development company, and he uses an analogy for servant leadership. And what she used is a jar. Okay. So she proceeds to describe 5 best practices. These are actually common sense, but in reality, they are not really commonly practiced. So the first, sorry. Oops. The first is stop and pause. So she begins with the top of the jar, the cork. So she says that sometimes the servant leaders just need to put a cork on the jar. We need to just stop and pause. So Alison describes the pause as so powerful because when we pause, we can then respond to one another versus just react. When we pause, we can listen to what's not being said, leading to deeper trust with one another. And lastly, she says that when we pause, this clears and declutters our mind before giving a critical presentation or maybe making a decision. So in my case, actually before a very important call, whether it be an ops review, a boost with Ronald or Amit, I go away for 10 minutes. I walk. And there's a nearby church. I stop by for maybe for 1 minute, just to clear my mind. And this actually helps me because after that, I can now give a more complete, comprehensive reporting and make sure that I don't miss anything. So yes, guys, do you also believe in this stop and pause best practice?
Yeah, definitely I do. If I'm doing something like 5 minutes before a critical meeting or something that I have to organize my thoughts, well, definitely some ideas or solutions may fall through the cracks on that meeting. So giving probably, just as you said, probably 10 minutes or 15 minutes to prepare to whatever critical conversation that we have or talk. Just to reorganize, refresh your mind. So in a way, it's kind of like a preparation.
Yes.
Prepare for something.
Because most of the times there's just so many things to say, so many things that happened in the past week, but I have to tell them all. But yeah, so that's how I stop and pause.
Yeah, but in case for a long day, right? So you have consecutive meetings, then you have to prepare for that early on because jumping from one meeting to the next, it helps to keep your thoughts organized and plan out your agendas.
Like taking shower in between. You can also find answers.
Yeah, that will definitely reset you.
Yes, I also do that.
Doesn't that
I do
person
that too. I
minutes?
do walk away sometimes, like, if eh, long meetings or I get an email that has a deeper meaning to it and I have to respond and I'm not in that right mind, I would walk away. And my favorite thing to do is to listen to loud disco music and I walk so that it clears my mind before I respond to this email that, and my mind's clear and I'm in the right mind. So
Yes. Okay. Next, she talked about valuing individuality. So this is actually this is a puzzle piece, but she's not referring to standing out in front of the team or being or being an essential piece, because actually that's hard to do. What servant leaders do instead is that they provide the conditions in a workplace for people to come and be exactly who they were meant to be. So it's like you bring your wounds, your scars, because she believes that this will bring also their creativity, their passion, and their beauty. So it's another paradox. So in my case, in every weekly team meet, we always include a knowledge sharing session, because what anybody knows, everybody has to know. And yes, and this helps a lot, especially in our operations. But I encourage them to be themselves while sharing. That's how that's how I implement this value, individuality. Yes. Any comments from the audience before I proceed?
Yeah, my takeaway from this is we take a little bit of something with everyone we know or who we work with. Right? So let's say we have someone who's compassionate, who's someone critical thinking. So in some ways we assimilate those characteristics and it kind of help us in the long run to be able to deal with such scenario we're in. What that specific strength among our team members we provide valuable or reusable with our other dealings. So that's my takeaway from this.
So the next one is praise and acknowledgement. So she says that servant leaders understand that we all walk around with an invisible bucket, and based on our interactions, we are there filling each other up and we're taking from one another. So servant leaders are intentional, she says, about filling people up. And they do it very specific, not just saying, oh, thank you for that job. She says that you have to really be specific. Thank you for executing this script and then implementing this, so on and so forth. It's very specific. So in my case, I actually do this very often. I give thanks to the group in our group chat. And actually, in one occasion, I even went beyond and reached out to the manager of the team whom my teammates supported. So of course, I first asked him, are you satisfied with what maybe Javid or Shidar did? Did they complete their support for you? Then afterwards, I asked him if you would somehow consider giving him a CVN. Well, of course, he obliged, but actually my this is out of sincerity, because my intention is really to motivate my teammates, to tell them that, look, your efforts are being recognized. So just go on and do extra effort. So yeah, that's what I did with this praise and acknowledgement.
Yeah, when things get mundane, right? So from time to time, you get a lot of ticket doing the same thing over and over. It helps from time to time to recognize your team members.
Has the
Well done. Mhm.
show of hands here? Who has asked someone outside of IT to give a core value to someone on your team?
Me.
Outside of core apps, yes. And then you gone and said, hey, somebody outside core app. So asking, so for me, it's like me talking to, what's an example? Mohit Shah back in the day. You know, Mohit's a nice, sharp guy, but he was always kind of focused on the next thing. So that happens a lot with leaders who are always focused on the next thing. You gotta remind them, hey, you gotta thank people for the last thing, right? So I used to call Mo and, hey, did you appreciate that work that my team did? And he'd say, I did. I'm like, cool. Well, we never got a CVN for it.
Yes, I
It's
think
okay because everybody's different, right? Some people like that's the first thing they think of. Okay, I want to say thank you. Other people, it's not the first thing they think of. But when you remind them, they're like, oh shoot, of course.
yeah,
Okay,
okay.
so how many was about half of us have done it? So don't be ashamed. Again, people are different, right? Go ahead.
Yes. So the fourth best practice is, well, I said it a lot, empowerment. So of course, our leaders want their teammates to be creative, but they don't want them to do the job the way they want them to do the job. Because servant leaders want the creativity, the unique talents, and they want to empower actually to develop the project in the teammates' creative way. That to Ali is empowerment, and of course she understands how important that is. So in my team actually, when there were so many databases now being handed over to us, I just have to pick someone to handle one server, focused. So for example, there's someone for time warp, someone for data warehouse, someone for Tuba, someone for TQT, someone for heartbeat, so on and so forth. Yes. Any reflections from the team on this empowerment?
Let's talk about empowerment. What does empowerment look to you? Thanks, Renee. This is a great topic. Anybody want to chime in on what empowerment looks like to you and on the teams that you guys are managing? How are you empowering your people? What are you doing with people?
Well, for me, my thoughts for empowerment is developing your team members or other have the skill to be able to act on your behalf in case if you are not available, or to make a critical decisions that are sound and acceptable in line to what your directives are. So empowering team members, like let's say for example, a critical meeting or a decision has to happen, right? Like let's say restart a server, you don't necessarily have to seek approval, given that those are technically emergency situations, right? So that we can bring the business back up as soon as possible. So though there are some IT processes that needs for approval and so on, but in case of acting immediately with sound solutioning, or rather proper course of action, would be the best empowerment that I can think of.
Delegated authority. That's a good one, Ronald.
Mhm.
And the best way to delegate authority is to do it openly with a broad audience. I'll give you an example, which I did a while ago, to empower Mrs. Sai as the owner of my calendar. No one can reach out to me and ask for time on my calendar. I'd say maybe what, like once a month, I'll schedule a task us meeting. But she's got to own it. And so every once in a while, someone tries to go around that. You got to delegate the authority. You got to remind people, nope, this is the way it works. Any other examples of delegated authority you guys want, or other ways that you're empowering your team?
By pushing them, John and team, pushing them to lead the call, for example, with stakeholders.
It's a great way. Yep.
Yes. And hearing their feedback afterwards, their reflection afterwards, they felt really empowered. Thank you, Ken, for having me experience this. for doing this, and it's happy to know that that's the reflection afterwards.
I think for me, John, um, empowerment is also like asking a simple question of what do you think? What would be your inputs about this matter? By actually asking them their their thoughts about the matter, they they will feel seen also. It somehow empowers them that, oh, okay, I have a say on this matter. My leader wants to hear me out because my opinion matters also and I matter too. So somehow it kind of empowers them also that they have something that they can contribute to that particular, let's say, problem or finding a solution, right? So yeah, I think that's
Yeah,
how
I
I
mean, I agree. So what do you think? You know, it's as simple as what do you think? I don't know. What do you think? Right? I think you guys have even heard me like that, right? I mean, that's a learned behavior for me. I'll tell you that. I was first and Terry first met 16 years ago with a know-it-all. So yeah, so that's the thing. It's like, I don't know, what do you think? What do you guys think? Would you agree? Would you all agree? Um, and if you agree, please chime in. Sometimes we say, what do you think? And it's pretty clear that people still aren't used to giving their opinions. How do we get people to talk? How do we get people to open up to us and express their thoughts? How are you doing that within your team? That'd be interesting because I struggle with that sometimes. How have you empowered communication? Like, I think early on, right, you asked, what do you think? And everybody's quiet, right? Paul, how have you guys been empowering communication? With one team?
You're breaking
I didn't
up.
understand. Yeah, I didn't understand what John said. Sorry.
Your,
You're
That was
breaking,
how
you're
we are.
breaking up.
your Wi-Fi is
How are we
intermittent,
empowering?
Jan.
Yeah, how are we empowering communication within our teams?
Yeah, so when you ask people, what do you think? Sometimes they don't respond, right? Sorry if I'm having bad connection. But sometimes they don't respond, right? Like a lot of times on the calls, I'm like, what do you guys think? And nobody says anything, right? That's reality. So how are you guys getting people to talk on your teams if they're hesitant to start?
I share my own thoughts first and let them, think about of those scenarios that I experience if they also experience that. So once I share my ideas and experiences, that's the time they will also, give their opinion or share something that they also experience. Maybe that's how we can able to really break that, silence from them.
Anybody else want to share?
Well, I try to be a little patient. So when I don't get a response, I try to be patient. And then I'll probably casually call out someone, hey, what do you think about it? So when I guess that breaks the ice because when I know it's bad to put people on the spot, but then at times you have to do it. So then
Not bad
I'll
to put
probably
people
call
on the
out
spot.
someone. And then I guess that just breaks breaks the ice, and then others also start chiming in because then I guess at times people are hesitant because they may think that okay, what they want to say is probably not the right thing. But I guess
Right.
there's nothing
I
right
guess
or wrong.
it depends on it depends on the situation. Some people don't speak because they feel like they don't actually understand the conversation, so they can't contribute, and they're afraid to say, I don't understand. So they just keep quiet. Right? So they're like, oh, the discussion is way in over my head. I don't want to say anything because what I'm going to say they might think I'm stupid. Right? That's
a great
a
call
typical.
out.
That's a very typical. Which we all, not everybody knows everything.
No, I think that's a great point,
right,
Terry.
like I don't have a problem saying, even to John, to say, John, I don't get what you said. Please explain in plain terms.
Yeah, I just wish you wouldn't say it quite so much.
One thing I can share, as well. Yeah, even John will say this to a meeting, right? When I was handing a project, right? But John will say, "What can you say about this? You're the expert." Right? Let them
Yeah.
feel that they are somewhat like needed. Their opinions matter.
So this is a great point. One of the best things, this is a crazy concept, but I learned, I read this in a book, so I'm not making this up. You being vulnerable and professing your own ignorance are two of the best ways to be a servant leader. Because when you do that, people can do that on your team. Right? Saying, I don't know. If you say, I don't know, your team will know they can say, I don't know. And then you can help them. Right? Or I don't get it. I don't get what you're saying. So being vulnerable is a great way to establish and empower your team. It sounds kind of crazy, right?
Okay. Can I proceed? We still have
Yeah, go.
5 minutes.
Yeah,
Okay.
go
This is
ahead.
actually a wrapping up. The fifth is actually on transparency. So, well, Allison said that, yeah, as John mentioned, you have to be vulnerable, confidently vulnerable. So the servant leaders ask how his teammates can get better, how he can serve them better, and servant leaders invite feedback in. And also servant leaders, yeah, precisely, are not afraid to be confidently vulnerable. So a long time ago, one of my teammates was about to resign. But surprisingly, he asked me for advice. I was barely only months into TaskUs then. So of course, I could only give him congratulatory remarks. But he did eventually resign. But up to this day, we still exchange greetings on LinkedIn, say Happy New Year, Merry Christmas, because primarily because maybe I was really sincerely transparent to him in those times when he was still here. I have no bad feelings about him resigning. So yeah, actually that's the last topic, and she ended up the TEDx by saying everyone wins when the leader gets better, and then we lead the most important person in this world, yourself. So yeah, again, I chose this topic as a guide for myself primarily, and to make myself better, and I hope I was able to impart anything useful to you. So thank you for
Great
this. And
topic. Hey, before we
Thank you.
exit transparency,
My favorite.
transparency. Yeah, I mean that goes
Yes.
about vulnerability and not, saying I don't know. Those things kind of all fall in the transparency bucket. So I mean, sharing. That's the thing. It's like empower people with resources, and that could be information, that could be partnerships, right? So I think you guys have heard me. Hey, why don't you go talk to this person? And be the network that connects people that are going to succeed more because they connected with somebody who's going to make them greater than themselves. That's a vision that's great to have as a servant leader, and I know you all can do it, and I know you've done it. Anyway, so it's a good topic. Anybody else want to add anything else to this? Something you think is important for servant leadership?
Yeah, I think these are all things that I've seen throughout my tenure here with TaskUs that we are focused on doing and attempt to do, which is a very good thing, I think. And it's a great, these are all great things to focus on as far as our servant leadership is concerned, and really to kind of double down on that, to get that, provide that trust, provide that empowerment for our teams, and continue to give them the opportunities to step up and then help coach where we have opportunities to do so. So these are all things that kind of are characteristics, I think, of what we've seen and what I've seen. There's always opportunities for growth here, but I think it's something that we definitely should take away and focus on with our groups going forward.
So yep, that's all from me.
Great topic, Renee.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
you,
Nice
Renee.
job.
Thanks, Renee.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.